America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Jordan Bruno, vice president of Job Creators Network.
And you can subscribe to the show at SalemPodcastNetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. Today, we are joined by Kristin Jackson. She is an entrepreneur with a passion for presenting news and information in a free and fair way, allowing Americans to see and think for themselves on the critical stories that impact their lives. In 2022, the Free Spoke app launched for Apple and Android phones, so more free thinkers can access uncensored studies and articles and reports unshackled from big tech's bias. Kristin keeps the tech company charging toward its aggressive mission of being the go-to technology platform that respects your privacy, doesn't track or sell your personal information, and doesn't censor viewpoints. Kristin, thanks so much for joining us on Main Street Matters.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's just start out. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you came up with this idea, and describe the platform for us.
Yeah. So I'll give credit right out of the gate to my co-founder, Todd Ricketts. Folks may know him. He's one of the owners of Chicago Cubs. And I worked with his family for about 10 years now. We launched another company together. And he just said back in 2018, something's going on with Google. You know, an informed populace is so important to a free society, to the success of this American experiment that we're still living out today and working to protect. And we're relying upon the world's largest advertising company to get our information. And in addition to that being a little odd, we started to see a little bit of thumb on the scale of what Google would want you to see, depending on what the topic was. And we said, this is dangerous. This is dangerous for society. We need an alternative. A little bit about my background. I am from the Midwest. I really relate to that normal middle American, American out there who works hard to succeed in a society like ours that allows you to be anything you want to be. I went to grad school at Georgetown. I worked in U.S. Congress and as a staffer leading a foreign affairs subcommittee, but I also had the opportunity to work overseas in Venezuela, executing U.S. government grants. And you really see what happens when you don't have that democratic ideal and the debate of ideas that helps societies flourish. And so those passions coming together is what launched Free Spoke. We are a full search engine competitor to Google, so you can use us as your full search engine. But it's really three things that differentiate us. And we said, we need to get back to what the internet was always supposed to be and build the future of the internet based on that foundation. And that's 3 points. Providing all viewpoints. So you're not going to come in and get siloed into one viewpoint. With privacy, which we should get into how important that is to making sure you can get all viewpoints, and without pornography. And that third piece can kind of feel like a shock. And, there's a lot of discussion there as well, but we think all three pillars are really important for the future of the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing, the internet and social media, those are town squares. Those are modern day town squares. And to have those voices silenced, our own organization was silenced by YouTube 2 years ago, or actually it was during the summer of love, I guess, during all the riots. And all we did was string together some news stories showing the violence. And it was local news stations. We strung actual footage. We didn't do anything to it. We just strung it together to show footage around the country. Yeah. And we were silenced on YouTube and we were silenced on Twitter as a result. And there's no reason for that because it was facts.
And you have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to go to get that information, that straight reporting information out. You're stuck. And that should scare people, right? Like there should not be such control over information that when you get shut down by one outlet, you don't have another platform to go to get just basic information out.
Yeah, Kristin, I mean, I certainly speak for a lot of people when I say I have to scroll many, many pages on Google to find anything that we do or any of my other favorite personalities or commentators, or just even just a straight down the middle recitation of the top news. Can you tell us a little bit about how Google goes about putting his thumb on the scale, as you said? I just read a study in preparation of this interview saying that Google may have swayed 6 million votes in the 2020 election, changing the election outcome. Sounds like to me like borderline election interference. I don't know if you've seen that study or can speak just broadly to how Google puts its thumb on the scale.
Yeah. So broadly speaking, as you think about your search engine, how it operates, it is crawling. It crawls the information across the internet, and then it categorizes it and stores it, and then it reads your search query, and it works to bring recent and relevant results in response to that query. That search engine needs to do that well, or you're not going to use it. So Google does have an incentive to try to understand what you're looking for and give that to you. And that should be how it operates most of the time. Then you layer on an additional aspect where Google knows everything about you, Jordan. It knows every site that you're going to. If there is Google Ads connected into that website, if there's Google Analytics, because that website's trying to understand who's using their website and target them more effectively, Google's tracking that and knows that you were there and what you clicked on, what you went slower over. And then at any time you're using a Google product, all of that information, Gmail, Google Docs, et cetera. So Google has knit together this very, 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 very detailed profile about you in particular. And it's trying to get you into information that you're going to click on so they can make more money off ads, either for products or with their content providers that have Google Ads on their page. So ultimately, Google's trying to make money off of you. And it's using all of that data and recency and relevancy to get you that information. Now, that's one thing. And people may say, okay, that's a business model. That's fine. But you also have the ability to go in and downrank content. So you shadow ban it. So it's harder to find. Google could say the sources that you're looking for aren't popular, and so it gets downranked. Or they could say, we don't think the American public should see this data on a COVID study, so we are going to bury it or make sure that it does not appear in search results. And when you have control over that algorithm, you have the ability to make those decisions.
Yeah, interesting. Definitely beyond my knowledge set, but can understand, how they can do that shadow banning. So you don't even see it. You don't even notice. You just have this inkling. I'd say like conservatives and independents are roughly 50-50 split on how to approach this issue. I'd say there's one camp who believes, okay, Google's putting the thumb on the scale, then you go build a better Google. Is the crude way of putting it. It's a free market. You don't like them, go build a better one, which you guys are doing, which is awesome. Then there's another set that says, look, what Elaine mentioned earlier, these are town squares. They enjoy some government protections against being sued. So in that case, they actually shouldn't be allowed to put their thumb on the scale or have a liberal bias. Where do you come down on that debate?
We lean towards competition just because we think that's, you win over the hearts and minds and you provide a better product, and then you have longevity with your solution. Having worked in Congress, I understand the limitations. Even the best intentioned legislative response doesn't always hit the mark in changing with society and achieving the outcome you want. So I think there is combo. It's like you referenced, it's so hard to really identify where that thumb is on the scale because your results are different from my results. It won't show up in one moment and then it will at the next. And so it's really so slippery that I'm not sure you can legislate. I have this debate sometimes. I will give a shout out to our head of engineering, John Pedri, who's fantastic. And I say the government isn't going to go sit with John Pedri as he makes these decisions on how to surface results. Like that is an engineering task that has to be done. The people using our product is what's going to validate how we surface results or don't. So I just don't see a strong legislative regulatory solution there. However, I am much enjoying watching the antitrust lawsuit against Google. That's the closing arguments were a couple weeks ago. And it's very, very clear that Microsoft Bing would love to have the data that Google has. Microsoft Bing does feel like Google is a monopoly because Bing has such a hard time competing in this space. The data came out that Google pays let me get the numbers right, $26.3 billion each year to be the default search engine everywhere. And in closing arguments, the defense made the point that on behalf of the government, they made the point that Google is spending more money to be the default search engine everywhere than they are spending to improve your search results. So I think there's some room for government to come in and say, this is a monopoly and this isn't serving society, and we need to take some action there.
Just to follow up on that question before I go to my next, do you think it's even possible for the government to regulate like they do regulate these search engines like they do a utility? Is that just so? I watch these hearings. The reason why I ask is I watch these hearings, when the CEOs of the social media companies come in and Google and everything like that. And I mean, I'm not trying to be critical of members of Congress. They're brilliant people. They wouldn't be where they were, but they don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Well, and what's frustrating to us, to hit on the pornography example real quick, these technology CEOs will say, yeah, it's devastating. It's devastating what's happening to your children, but there's just nothing we can do about it. And that's not true, to your point. Like that, a lawmaker may say, okay, there's nothing they can do about it, but competition can come in and say, there's absolutely something we can do about it. You protect copyright immediately, Google. If somebody takes a Lion King video and streams it and puts it up and doesn't have the rights, that comes down immediately. If you want to block pornography because you know that 1/3 of online pornography is sexual exploitation and sex trafficking, you absolutely can do that. So I think that there are phases where government can come in and say, we have to do something to stop this pandemic of our children being hurt by this content. And we could heavily regulate that. But there's, like you're saying, there's so many layers here. I don't think there's a one-stop shop for regulation for these companies. It really has to be competition.
Okay. Barriers to entry. I mean, just start a search engine. When you come in and you've got the big guys there already, Google. Talk to us about what some of the barriers to entry on this one was, because this is big.
The biggest barrier is people are just set in their ways. You don't even realize you're opening up Chrome and in Google, or you open up Safari and you don't even realize that you're in Google. You're just searching a search bar that says Safari. You don't think about it. That's why Google's paying $26 billion every year, because they know if they don't have that default status, people don't change because they don't think about it that much. So that's the biggest barrier. The second one is just helping people understand how you're being oppressed and exploited by the current model. We've gotten used to that. It's free and it's great. And I ask it anything and it kind of already knows what I'm going to ask and it gives me a great answer and I'm happy. And that's a barrier, because we as a smaller company, we're improving, but we're not going to be at that level for a while. And so that education that this is exploiting you, this is oppressing you, and you should take this extra step to fight it so you can create a better future.
What about competition? We're seeing entire industries pop up, whether it's recruitment with Red Balloon that are catering to conservatives, but they're open to all voices. Because we're not going to see conservative platforms and conservative social media shadow ban and block liberal posts. That's just not how conservatives work. But we're seeing like DuckDuckGo. is that a direct competitor to you? And how do you differentiate yourself from them? There is so few. So right now, you're kind of not in a crowded space there.
Yeah, we're trying to keep that space so we can grow before more people jump in. And what you started out with is people are frustrated. So I think what you're seeing in all of these alternatives pop up is there's a large growing population saying something isn't right. We used to have access to everything. People weren't being punished for political perspective. We would debate it. One of my favorite things here, not to get us too off track, so pull me back to your question if you need to, but our nation was built on debate. Our philosophers that our founding fathers listened to debated. Brett Stevens had a great piece years ago where he said they didn't ever misunderstand. They would spend years chewing over the other opinion to respond artfully and deeply, and then it would enhance the conversation. And our founding fathers did that. And then our Supreme Court justices did that. Scalia and Ginsburg would say that was their relationship. They had diametrically opposed approaches to how we should govern. But Ginsburg said once she saw Scalia's argument before she'd written hers, and she had to go back and rewrite it. And it wasn't that she took his opinion, it was that hearing his opinion made hers stronger. And this society benefits from that. So we're seeing that people are realizing something's wrong. And so it's fueling more competition in this space. DuckDuckGo is one of our direct competitors. What's interesting about DuckDuckGo is they are Microsoft Bing with privacy built on top. So they didn't have that barrier of building that whole technology and trying to provide that full solution. They took that full solution and then they added value on top with more privacy. They started to lose some following because they blocked Russia Today at one point, and they were proud. They went on Twitter and said, hey, we're upset with what's happening in Ukraine. We're blocking Russia Today. And the huge part of their following said, hey, what? You're blocking content? This isn't what we thought. And then a couple of years later, I think it was 2022, it was exposed that they were leaking data to Microsoft. And it makes sense from a technology standpoint because we know they have that close relationship. Microsoft has to be getting something for it. But the population that was using DuckDuckGo felt lied to, which I think is accurate. So that's, they're in this space and they are popular, but as people are becoming more knowledgeable of what they're sacrificing by using these bigger platforms, they're looking for alternatives.
Interesting.
Kristin, this might not be a direct parallel, so, pull me back if it's not, but I'll try to set the stage here. In 2020, Twitter banned distribution of a New York Post story showing contents from the Hunter Biden laptop. Earlier in 2020, at behest of the government, they banned statements on ivermectin and broader stuff about COVID. Ironically, a lot of it later turned out to be true. Independents and conservatives complained, and the response largely was, go build a new Twitter. Parler came in and did just that. And they were the number one downloaded app in the App Store. In response, the government colluded with big tech and banned Parler from the app stores and went after their servers and basically destroyed the company. Are you concerned that a similar thing might happen to you at some point down the line?
Yeah, it is sadly a good parallel. I would start off just for your listeners to know, we show all viewpoints. So let me just give a little background and then we'll get into how you protect yourself from getting attacked. When you go to Free Spoke and you either on desktop, if you scroll through the news feed, or on the app, if you go to the news feed, you're going to see the top 40 trending headlines at any given time. And then you're going to see articles listed underneath that labeled left, right, middle, and you'll get to compare headlines side by side. If you search something in the search bar, your results, you'll get left, right, middle results, and then full search results under that. So we show everything. So if we're ever attacked for being right-leaning, it's simply because we're giving right-leaning content an equal platform to left-leaning content. So the frustration that I face is, why would that be conservative? I think the reality is the status quo thinks right-leaning content shouldn't get an equal platform. So I do think we're winning that fight. People are so frustrated that they have more access to information they've ever had, but they feel less informed. and that we're so polarized we can't get anywhere, and people are getting frustrated with that. So I think hopefully Free Spoke can win that intellectual debate and not get attacked as a result. You have to have backups, and that's how it's expensive to employ an entire engineering team and then store all of your data and then have an entire backup in case you get shut down and you need to switch cloud providers. But that is how we look at that. There are, similar to Elaine's point, there are alternatives popping up in the cloud provider space, also in the hard data center space as well, which provides more areas for security in case somebody tries to deplatform you. So we build those relationships as well, but they all face that same barrier to entry where it takes so long to provide that full service to really have Free Spoke fully operational. So that's what we do. We have backups in case we're deplatformed.
How's the uptake on your downloads? How many, I don't know if you call them users or...
Yeah, we try not to say users because it has really been vocabulary that people are being used and abused. So how do we change that? We like to refer to our user base as our free folk, because Free Spoke has a lot of free folk who like to use our product. Our highest month, we had 1.6 million people visiting 6 million times in a month. And so we're really using that as our baseline to continue to grow deep user base of free folk. And we're really focused on our new addition of a premium account. So what really keeps you from being used and being the product is if you pay a little bit for the product. Therefore, you're the customer, and the company wants to make you happy and keep you coming back. And so paying a little bit for your search engine helps right that ship and right that business model. So we offer premium accounts. It's $5 a month, $30 a year, and you get a full ad block if you sign up for that. So you can scroll through news and information without being bombarded, but it's really just joining the fight and saying, we have to switch this business model that isn't tracking and manipulating me. So our focus is really growing there, but we've had good initial success. Some of our early marketing, just for insight, is we show you what Google won't. And what's fascinating from just a market indicator is people take us up on that. There's a lot of skepticism that Google is giving you the full story. And so when you say, we're going to show you what Google won't, you come in, they test us, you land on a search bar that says search anonymously. You put in a search result, you don't see a ton of ads at the top. You see content labeled from different perspectives, and people feel, oh yeah, I got something Google wouldn't show me. And then people move on to download the product from there.
It's interesting how you said what you're doing is providing an equal platform for the conservative voice and the more liberal news. Because I actually have a friend who came to me with a little graphic, and it showed all of these online newspapers and publications of all kinds. And she wanted to know how do you know which ones are liberal? So she wanted me to put them in buckets.
Yeah.
And so when I think about what you just said, that my mind went right to the graphic that she showed me. And that's where we're at, because I do believe that we all put them in buckets, MSNBC, Fox News. But we do get more, I do see more liberal commentators come on and speak on Fox than I see conservatives on, say, MSNBC. But what is so, I guess, concerning to me is they openly turn off anytime the former president speaks. They just turn him off and say, we're not going to cover him. And they say it. They literally say, we're not going to cover him because we don't think he's honest. So they're making the decision to censor and keep valuable information away from their audience. And even all of the, not to get into that subject, but all of the anti-Israel college protests that were going on, they weren't covering them in the way that some of the conservative outlets were covering them, or the conservative outlets in that bucket.
Right.
And so I think those audiences weren't seeing truly what these people were saying, whether it was students or outside agitators. This is the messaging was frightening to see.
And therefore, you're not informed. You're not an intellectual populace, and you're not making decisions based off being an informed citizenry. And that causes problems. Taking just another kind of superficial example, many people on the left had no clue that Donald Trump could possibly be elected president in 2016 because their media wasn't covering it. And so they weren't informed. And I do think people, you're always going to have your buckets of people who say, you know what, I like my echo chamber. I feel good here. I'm going to carry this NPR tote and I'm going to tell people I'm informed. But the more you realize you're not fully informed, the vast majority of the population wants that full information, just like your friend. And we saw that through family members, but we did focus groups where we had other accounts where people said, I don't feel informed unless I read something from the right and something from the left. And where there's overlap, I know that's the truth. And so he said, we can help you. We can help you do that faster.
My last question, Kristin, is just, based on all this, how are you concerned by the TikTok ban preventing exactly what you're talking about, more voices talking about a diverse range of things, and then also the precedent of the government being able to come in and unilaterally shut down a speech platform?
So this is a great debate of ideas, because my head was kind of going one way, and the way you asked the question, now I kind of see it going another way. I personally started out saying this feels heavy-handed. This feels slightly dangerous. Where are we going? And then selfishly, I started saying this is the government acknowledging that your data is a national security asset. What does that mean? Because that's what that bill really, reading the legislation, they're saying China has all this access to your data, and that's a national security concern. Well, what about Google? That's the size. If it were an economy, it'd be the size of Brazil or South Korea. It has access to all of that data. All these data brokers have access to all of that data. So selfishly, looking at just the legislation itself, I think it's a really positive movement of acknowledging that this is out of control. We have to, in order for it to be positive, we have to continue and say, okay, if this is really a concern that China has it, it's really a concern that Google has it, and that these data brokers have it. And from what I'm hearing on the Hill is that it is opening eyes, because we have that legislation moved through. We have been talking to the Liberty Project. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that yet. I'd check it out. Frank McCourt just wrote a book, Our Biggest Fight. And he outlines all these things that we're talking about today, how we've given all of our personhood online over to these big tech companies who are exploiting us. And so there's a discussion. They just put out a press release today that they want to put in a bid to buy TikTok to make it the people's platform where you would actually have control over your data. So I hear where we're going. And I think, the government involved at this level can be dangerous. But what I'm seeing is the status quo is really dangerous. The fact that we've given all of this power to these few companies who are abusing us with it was also bad. And this is opening up the debate for something different.
So if the sale of TikTok is forced and it's bought by this Liberty Project or a group of people that come together, they would keep it intact. They would take away, they would instill the privacy that we need to keep people safe and their data safe, but it would remain that public square that it is, where people can conduct business or communicate or whatever.
The public square would still exist. So if it's purchased, there's so much value in that company because it's so widely utilized and you can produce much revenue from that. So that would be the ideal, as an American company buys it. And if this consortium purchases it, their mission is to give that data power back to you, the people, and change the trajectory of the internet, which I would be very supportive of. Anybody else, who knows who's actually going to be able to purchase it? And China saying that they're not going to sell it if they can't keep it through fighting this in courts, they're going to shut it down.
Well, how can people learn more about Free Spoke, your platform, and what the future holds for you?
And I would love to hit 2 high points before we wrap too. So we do have an American-made company portal in FreeSpoke. That's something we heard from people who said, I can't find, it's so hard to shop American-made, and Google and Amazon make it so easy to shop foreign-made. Where do I find American-made brands? So people can go to freespoke.com. You go to our shopping portal, and it's all American-made brands. We partner with companies and highlight specials and just bring that to light. When you search in the FreeSpoke search bar, you also get those American-made companies get that equal footing to the larger foreign-made. So similar to the left-right, we're putting everyone on equal playing field. So I wanted to highlight that since you guys focus on Main Street. And then I just really want to give a couple data points on the pornography. So we learned this and we can't sit on it. So online pornography is the 3rd most common form of sex trafficking. I mentioned that. In 2023 alone, the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children reported receiving over 36 million tips into their cyber tip line of online child sexual abuse. And those 36 million tips had over 105 million images, files, and videos proving that this was happening. So this wasn't a mission of FreeSpoke when we started out. We wanted to provide that platform for the debate of ideas and make sure access to information was secure. But we learned what was happening in the exploitation of women and children and some men online. And really, men suffer a lot through addiction and the dopamine and zero judgment. When this is coming after you online, you click, and then people are getting addicted at alarming rates. So that's not necessarily the lightest note to end on, but just that since that's one of our pillars, it's helpful for people to understand what's really going on there. So you can go check us out at freespoke.com. I encourage you to do that, explore it, experience it. You can go on your phone to your app store and download the app. And we hope that you love it, want to be a part of the future, and then you can sign up for premium to really get skin in the game.
Freespoke.com. We'll definitely go and check it out. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. And thank you to you all for taking the time to listen. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. Please subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. And we'll be back soon with another episode.